afternoon. My name is Dave Norton from Discovering New England History, and we're going to bring you episode 2 of the New England Defenders that actually were at the Alamo. And a lot of people don't know this story, so we're going to correct a little history here in New England. And the 3 folks we're talking about is Captain Albert Martin from Rhode Island, Corporal Gordon Jennings from Connecticut, and Dr. Amos Palmer from Massachusetts. So we'll go to the next slide. Now, last time we left off, we showed how these folks got to Texas. And they arrived in San Antonio in 1836. And that's a picture on the left there, probably, of what San Antonio, Texas looked back in the day. And of course, on the right there is a picture of the Alamo. We'll go to the next slide. Now, there were actually 8 Alamo Defenders from New England. And we're speaking about the last 3, Amos Pollard, Captain Albert Martin, and Corporal Gordon Jennings. And those are highlighted in red. And these others, there's really not a lot of information on them. Private Miles Andros from Bradford, Vermont. Private Robert Cochran from Pembroke, New Hampshire. Private John Flanders from Salisbury, Massachusetts, and William Howell, who was also a surgeon, and they don't even list his town, but he is from Massachusetts, and William Lynn from Boston. And all those 8, they all perished in the Alamo. And there's your 1824 Texian flag, 1824. And we'll go to the next slide. Now, we're going to talk about the Alamo, and originally it was called San Antonio de Valero, and it was constructed in 1718. And in order to really understand the story of how everything came together here, we're going to go back in history when Spain controlled all the area and right when Mexico took over. And there's a great picture there of the Alamo. We'll go to the next slide. And I highlighted this here. A lot of people think that's it. It's just the Alamo, but that's the Alamo Chapel. And on the right there, I've highlighted where the actual Alamo Chapel is. And you can see the rest of it. It was quite a big complex, the mission. All enclosed. You had everything in there. And we're going to go through the how these were all put together. And you can see there was no, it was out in the plains of Texas. There's not much around it either. And all the missions that in San Antonio, they were all sited by the San Antonio River. And of course, that's what you needed. You needed the water. And it's a very desert region back in the day. So we'll go to the next slide. Now, we're talking about Spanish colonialism. And they started all these missions. And the whole idea was Spain was going to train all the Native Americans that were here and make them productive, make them citizens of Spain. So he had 5 different criteria that they were looking for. Number 1, Spanish must be learned. So the Native Americans had to learn Spanish. Number 2, the idea was to spread Christianity. So they had to convert to Catholicism. Number 3, they had to be in these settlements or missions. It was mandatory for their training. Number 4, they had to learn a trade so they could be productive citizens. And believe me, they taught you everything. How to farm and right on down the line, really. Number 4, like I said, learning a trade, very important. And number 5, all Spanish rules and regulations must be followed. So we'll go to the next slide. And these are the 4 missions beside the Alamo. And these 4 missions comprise a national park. And it's very interesting that the Alamo is not a national park, but these 4 are. And we're going to talk about each one of these. There's Mission Concepcion on the top left, 1731. Mission Espada, the oldest one, 1690. Mission San Juan, 1731, and Mission San Jose, 1720. And all of these are located within 7 miles south of San Antonio. And a lot of folks that visit down there don't know this story, and they really haven't taken a chance to visit them. We'll go to the next slide. Now, Mission Concepcion, you can see there's a close-up here. This is one of those, one of the missions, and we'll show you how they were all put together. We'll go to the next slide. And Mission Espada, 1690. That is amazing. That's all the original construction. Still there. And of course, Spain wanted to settle this area. And that's why they put all these missions together. And we'll go to the next slide. And on the Mission Espada, part of it, you can see how what's still left. And it's all restored. If you take a look in the top of all the walls, it's all fresh mortars all put in there, so you won't have deterioration. And you are definitely walking back into history. And it's amazing because a lot of folks that go to San Antonio, they look at the Alamo and they see it's right in the middle of the town, and you've got buses and you've got traffic and you've got high buildings all around it. In some sense, you really don't capture the essence of what it was like back in the day. All you have to do is go 7 miles down and visit all these missions, and it's really amazing. You don't hear any cars or anything. There's nothing around, and it's just like you're just dropped back into history, back in the early 1700s. We'll go to the next slide. And that's one of my favorite shots I took. You can see all the different compounds that they had. 1690. And of course, they let you walk through it, and it's, take pictures and whatever. Excellent, excellent place to go. Go to the next slide. Mission San Juan, 1731. They've done a lot of rehabilitation on this. You can see they've covered the outside walls, kind of looking back what it looked like. Some of the other parts they really haven't got to yet. But these missions are very important for Spain in order to train all the people. We'll go to the next slide. And here's another part of the Mission San Juan. It's amazing. They had to have them all enclosed, of course, because they had, in that country, in that part of the area in Texas, the Native Americans really kind of opposed everything what the Spanish were doing, and they were always trying to raid all their compounds. And that's why, for protection, they needed this wall all the way around the compounds. We'll go to the next slide. And here's another one section there on the San Juan. You can see the roof construction. Everything is exactly the way it was. It's a beautiful to do, and a nice clear day to walk around through there and just imagine what was going on. Go to the next slide. And this is the largest one, Mission San Jose, 1720. Unbelievable. And we're going to talk a little bit about this so you get an idea exactly what Spain was doing. We'll go to the next slide. And what I did here is on the left is actually the chapel, okay? And if you take a look on the right, I was fortunate to find a layout of the whole compound, and that's how it is. The entire wall is intact. And you can see on the drawing on the right, I circled where this actual church is. And we're going to go visit in the next couple of slides, coming from the church and working our way down there. We circled where all the Indian quarters, all these small quarters, one-room quarters, all the way around the outside wall, all the way around it. And then the bottom one, we're going to start there, which is the main gate going into this compound. Go to the next slide. And there's the main gate. Now you can see how tall it is. And I'm very fortunate because my wife really enjoys my journeys to a lot of these historical sites. And there she is. And she was really excited about all these missions. It was just a tremendous vacation for us. And we'll go to the next slide. This is inside the compound. And you can see they still have all those separate rooms there. They also have these small fireplaces where they used to cook all their meals. And they had to, of course, learn Catholicism, so they attended a lot of church services, and they learned a lot of trades. And it was quite a social experiment back in the day with Spain. We'll go to the next slide. Here's another close-up here of some of the one rooms of the Indian quarters going all the way around. I mean, you walk in the main gate, and as far as you can see on the wall, there's all these quarters. And we'll go to the next slide. And there's a full close-up of the church. All four of these missions in San Antonio are all active. Every Sunday they have church services there with congregations, and it's just wonderful what they've done. It's just amazing to go there. Now on my desk here, I picked up this DVD, which is excellent. It's about the San Antonio missions. Okay. And they cover all the missions and everything, and it's done very well. And the last section of it, they interviewed the folks that were actually restoring these, all the architecture and everything. And believe it or not, they came from New England. One gentleman they interviewed was, I guess, professor at Harvard University, and he was there with another professor. And what they do is every year they go down to San Antonio right before the winter would set up here in New England. So they would go down there in November, and they would stay down there doing all their work until April. And they interviewed the folks in there. So if you want to see how it was done, painstakingly care they've done to preserve history, it's worth getting this DVD. Excellent, excellent DVD. Now we'll go to the next slide. Now, here's a close-up of the Alamo. We're going to go back to the Alamo, which was a mission. And you can see the Chapel Church there. And that's really a great painting, and that's the way it looked back in the day. And now we're going to go ahead with some of the activities that were going there at that point in history. Go to the next slide. And once again, Texas was open to new settlers in 1824. And once again, everyone from America that went there, they came in the covered wagons or whatever, and there's a house up there, that typical house that they would construct in different communities. And they had to become Mexican citizens. They were no longer American citizens. Convert to Catholicism. They couldn't bring any slavery with them. They had to work hard and be productive and obey all Mexican laws. And things change now because the Mexican had their independence from Spain, and they elected a president of Santa Ana. There's pictures up there. We'll go to the next slide. Now, from our last episode, we talked about the Come and Take It cannon in Gonzales, where they sent a detachment of soldiers to try to take the cannon back. General Santa Anna was really tough. he ruled the place with an iron fist, all of Mexico. And he just had a lot of problems, all the folks from America that were settling in Texas. And they started the revolution. And so he had Mexican General Cos was there right in San Antonio, and he was in charge of the Alamo and in charge of the whole city. Now, what happened here is all the Texians, as they're called, got together, and they went to San Antonio, and this is the beginning of what they call the Texas Revolution. Now, Mexican General Cos was Santa Anna's son-in-law, and he had 600 soldiers with him, and he took a look at the Texians pouring into San Antonio, and he said, the only place I can defend it is if I went inside the Alamo, which he did. So all 600 soldiers now were inside the Alamo. We'll go to the next slide. Now, this is what they call in Texas the Battle of Behar, 1835. This is a year before the Alamo as we know it. They uprising against Mexico, all the harsh things they had to do in San Antonio, and all three of the New Englanders were there. Gordon Jennings from Connecticut, Amos Palmer from Massachusetts, Albert Martin from Rhode Island. They surrounded the Alamo, and they actually attacked it, and General Cos was defending it. We'll go to the next slide. And there's General Cos. Now, he was overwhelmed. They surrounded it, and you can see the picture, a great painting there on the left of all the Texians. He surrendered the Alamo, and they let him go back down into down south into Mexico. Now, Santa Anna was really upset. His honor was and pride was really hurt because his son-in-law gave up at the Alamo. And we're going to continue the story here with the next slide and see what he's doing. So he found all about this, and then the Texians originally were going to destroy the Alamo, destroy all the cannons and everything else so that Santa Anna's armies would never have it. But Colonel Travis and Colonel Bowie took a look at it and said, this is a great place to reinforce. So they really upgraded all the defenses. And this is what the Alamo looked like back in the day. And we'll go to the next slide. Now, what I did is, a lot of folks here in New England don't even know about this. I took what they had, the picture of the Alamo, okay, and it showed all the different segments it was divided into. And based on the backgrounds of the three soldiers that were there from New England, I can pinpoint exactly where they were. We'll start on the left here, officers' quarters, and certainly Captain Martin, that's where he stayed. And going to the right up on the top, artillery quarters, and of course Corporal Jennings was an artilleryman, and that's where he stayed. And if you go down to the right, there's the hospital, and that's where Dr. Amos Palmer was. So now if you ever visit the Alamo, you sort of get an idea where these folks were. So we'll go to the next slide. And I took this picture on the left here. That's the actual hospital. And Dr. Amos Palmer from Massachusetts, he's the one that actually established the hospital, set everything up for the Alamo Defenders. And that painting there on the right, when I went down there, they commemorate him, and his painting's on inside one of these buildings here. So that's an important part of actually Massachusetts and New England history. And we'll go to the next slide. Now, General Santa Anna, he's really upset now. His honor has really been invaded, if you will, and he mobilizes the entire Mexican army. And there's a picture of what Mexico City looks like, a nice painting. And it shows all the cavalry and the soldiers, they're all getting together on the Santa Ana. And there's your Mexican flag up there on the left. And they're going to make the long journey from Mexico City to San Antonio to put down the rebellion. So we'll go to the next slide. And there's a nice painting there. It shows all the soldiers that did a long desert march to San Antonio. And Santa Anna vowed to put down the Texas rebellion. He was just absolutely going to crush them. And this was one of the, in military history, it's one of the greatest marches ever taken. It's such a long march and all the heat. It was so hot that the water was actually boiling in their canteens. It was quite the journey. We'll go to the next slide. Now, this Mexican army was well trained and equipped for battle. You can see all the different uniforms they had. I mean, they had everything. And of course, the Texians were just a collection of citizen soldiers from in that area that had renounced their American citizenship, or actually at the time Mexican citizens, and they weren't really trained. We'll go to the next slide. And once again, the Texians defend the Alamo. And I did a little bit of research, and there were, at this time, 156 volunteers inside the Alamo. Quite a few local families from San Antonio. They knew what was going to happen, and they went in for protection in the Alamo. And then the Alamo, Colonel Travis, he set up 21 cannons all the way around it. So they fully defended it, and they really expected Santa Ana was going to come up. We'll go to the next slide. And here's your typical Alamo Volunteers, and that's the Alamo flag, 1824. You can see there was thrown together from all different backgrounds and from different parts of America. They all came in, and they wanted their freedom and their independence from Mexico. And we'll go to the next slide. I really like this picture. General Santa Anna enters San Antonio, and that's a picture. There's San Antonio, and it's amazing. His whole army was right in San Antonio. And of course, all the Texians were defending the Alamo. And they surrounded the Alamo. So we'll go to the next slide. Now, on their way up, one of the other missions that we talked about, Mission Concepcion, was the closest one to the Alamo. And the Mexican cavalry, they needed a place to feed their horses, water their horses, and get all squared away. And they overtook this, no shots were fired or anything. They overtook this and made this as one of their spots that they held. And we'll go to the next slide. Now, they surrounded them, and it begins. There was 13 days the defenders of the Alamo held out. And we're going to go, starting certainly in this episode, day by day to give you an idea what they went through. So on February 23rd, 1836, it's the Alamo Siege, day 1. There's a picture of Colonel Travis standing up there by his artillery piece. And Colonel Travis welcomed Santa Ana. As soon as they surrounded, the Mexican army surrounded San Antonio, and then they surrounded the Alamo, Travis answered it with a cannon shot. Now, Travis was in charge of the Alamo. Originally, it was Colonel Jim Bowie, but he got sick with malaria and, I believe, typhoid fever. So he was really turned over his command to Colonel Travis. And Jim Bowie was confined into the hospital area of the Alamo. So we'll go to the next slide. Now, San Fernando Church, that's there. I went there. You have to find it. It's a little bit in the center of San Antonio. After the cannon shot was fired from the Alamo, General Santa Anna ordered a red flag raised from the top of the where the church bells were at San Fernando Cathedral. And the red flag was raised at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and it means no quarter. In other words, if you don't surrender, we will attack you, and everyone in there we will kill. So they got the Alamo got their answer from General Santa Anna. We'll go to the next slide. And once that red flag went up, Colonel Travis answered, and he fired a cannon right at the red flag. So things were really getting tense. And we'll go to the next slide. Now, they sent Captain Albert Martin out to deliver a message to Colonel Almonte. And Albert Martin, how brave can this be? The whole Mexican army of 2,000 or more soldiers. He rides out all by himself in Alamo and talks to Colonel Almonte and offers to have him come in and talk with Colonel Travis. And of course, Almonte says rejected the whole thing, and they couldn't get anywhere. So Captain Martin went back to the Alamo. So we'll take a look at the next slide. And there he is. There's the gates there, and he returned to the Alamo. The message from the Alamo, they wanted to find out if they could work out some kind of an agreement or... No way, Santa Anna was not going to do that. He's put the red flag up, and that's the end of day one here. Everyone's in the Alamo. It's completely surrounded by Santa Anna, and we'll continue on our next episode. We're going to go through each one of the 13 days of this story. It's important in American history and certainly New England history, and therefore the individual states from these 3 defenders that we're discussing now. So once again, this is Dave Norton from Discovering New England History. Have a good evening.